Welcome to the Elite BSC podcast, where our entire focus is helping commercial janitorial contractors succeed. You want a growing company, a thriving team, and healthy profits, and we are here to help. My name is Jordan Tong. I'm the founder of Elite BSC, a company dedicated to helping janitorial companies grow and thrive. I also serve as CEO and one of the owners of France Building Services. France is a janitorial company employing nearly 600 people. Since 2007, we grew from 1.5 million to more than 20 million in annual revenue and built what I think is one of the best teams in the world. The goal of Elite BSC and this podcast is to give owners in the industry a vision of where their company can be and the information and tools to get there. I want to share what I have learned over the years to make this a reality for you. All right, so in today's episode, I want to talk about ChatGPT. Unless you've been living under a rock, you have seen and used ChatGPT yourself. It is something that has become ubiquitous in just everyday life for everyone. Kids, older people, middle-aged people. I mean, just in every facet, I'm seeing people in every direction talking about their use of ChatGPT for this or that thing. So AI is a much broader topic that ChatGPT falls underneath that umbrella, which is what I'm going to focus in on today, and not necessarily AI in general, though there'll be a couple of AI things that I might mention. But what I wanted to do, if you go out and survey opinions, this is something that I've followed a bit lately and try to keep myself abreast on, because AI is certainly going to change the landscape of a lot of things. I think it's on the verge of being like an industrial revolution sort of change. And so I just want to be prepared for that. And, there's a lot of doom and gloom people out there that many of them have legitimate concerns. There's also some people that I think are overly bullish on it and think too highly of it for, I think, inappropriate reason or wrong reasons. And I think there's a smaller number of voices that are helping to navigate sort of the middle way there and thinking about that, being cognizant of the dangers. And so our little corner of the world, the janitorial industry, is a place that does not get much attention in many directions. So I wanted to focus in on, and maybe you care, maybe you don't care, but how I have been using ChatGPT in particular. Some uses that I've been using it for personally, some uses that we've used at our business or that you might consider using at your business, and then some cautions maybe to think about as we implement this into our lives and into our businesses. So I'm going to start first with just the how I use this. And this is in no specific order necessarily, but this is something I use it for these things on a somewhat regular basis. So the first one is outlines. So I don't think ChatGPT is great at coming up with new content or original content, particularly if you're really trying to niche down on a certain kind of topic. Like you can, if you go online and you read, particularly go to LinkedIn, or LinkedIn's a good spot for it. You can tell when someone has generated something with ChatGPT. Like it's fairly obvious. And so, but that being said, if I'm going to be giving a talk on something or even maybe recording a podcast like this, I might go to ChatGPT and just have it give me an outline or some suggestions. And usually what that does is it gets the wheel spinning for me. So sometimes I have writer's block and I'll struggle to get started. But once I've got the direction I want to go, or maybe I can take the ideas that are sort of hanging out there and then put them in a certain order that's logical and makes sense, then I'm off to the races. And so I use ChatGPT for that. And you can make outlines for a whole variety of things, but it can be a good way to just say idea generate to help you then create whatever document or content you're trying to produce, whatever that is. The second thing is rewording or condensing content. So some of us, so Jeff Carmen, who works on the team at Elite BSC, he would describe himself as very wordy, way too many words. And he will use ChatGPT to take something he's written, and it's like, hey, take this that's 800 words and turn it into 500 words. So it's using the substance of what he's done, but just helping to reduce and cut out the fluff that's in it. And that can be helpful. And rewording content is helpful. Repurposing things that you've already done, or writing summaries and that sort of thing. It is good taking that existing content that you have and condensing it down into something a bit smaller that maintains the same emphasis. And I think it's helpful for that. So another one, this is kind of in the idea generation topic, is when I'm trying to think of article topics or maybe even subject lines for emails, or because of some of the email marketing that I do, I will, again, use it as an idea generation. So I often will use it as a starting point, and then I'll sort of spin off of some of the things that I see to help create my own ideas there. And it can be helpful for that. It can, for instance, I write we write a lot of content, and one of the things it can help you do is if you can take all the content you've already written and use it as sort of a base for ChatGPT to start sourcing from, then it can start helping you come up with variations of the same content that you have, and that is helpful. I've also used it recently as I was doing something on Upwork, and I needed first of all, I needed to give someone a description of what I wanted done, and I used ChatGPT to create an Upwork job description for me, and then I tweaked it to the things that I wanted to say. And when I'm trying to crank out a bunch of information, typically stuff that might take me a while to research or think through, but it's not something that my creativity or my writing style matters that much, I'll use it to generate that kind of information for me. Another one, this one's kind of personal a little bit, is, and I've seen somebody, Larry Sanger, who's was one of the founders of Wikipedia, talking about his uses of ChatGPT. And one that he uses, and I do it as well for the same purpose, is just researching ideas. So I'm very interested in theological discussions, and so, for instance, if I'm thinking about or wrestling with a theological or philosophical topic, I will use ChatGPT to help me sort of understand the lay of the land, help me understand who some of the key figures are and what some of the arguments are, and then interact with those. Like, hey, this is argument. Help me understand more why they think this, and where's their support for that, and who are the main proponents. And you can have a little bit of a dialogue that helps you gain some clarity in a way that Google searches and combing through articles and blogs and things would take 10 times longer to do. And so that has been helpful. Another one is book chapter reviews. So I read a lot of books. I try to read 40 to 50 books a year. And some of them are easy reads or enjoyable reads. Sometimes I read things because I need to read them, because I need to keep my brain sharp in certain areas or whatever. And some of those are audiobooks, because I do drive a lot, and sometimes it's easy for me to, I don't have some steel trap of a memory, and so sometimes I won't be able to remember exactly what happened in the last chapter, if it's a fiction book, for instance, or the summary of the arguments from the preceding chapters in the book. And so I'll use it to do summaries for me. So I'm like, hey, I'm on chapter. I was trying to read through some Greek classics, for instance. So I was reading the Iliad and the Odyssey, and it's just a bit of a different genre for me, and so which comes with its own learning curve. And so I would get through with a chapter, and then I would have it summarize it for me, so that I made sure that I understood, and then I could drill down. Like, hey, there's so many names, can you remind me who this character is, and this character, and this character, and it would explain and sort of put the context on those. And I've done the same for business books as well. Where I'm like, hey, I read this, but can you summarize the ideas for me in this book that I read? And so I got what I'm looking for in maybe a more condensed form. And here's the thing, just maybe to round off this part about how I personally use ChatGPT. The more inputs, the better. So the more specific you are, the more you interact with it, the more specific you get on what you're looking for, the better it's going to be able to answer your questions or be able to provide the information that you're looking for. And so the more that I am able to load into it, for instance, the more outputs that I get that are relevant to me that I think are helpful. So let's move on here a little bit to some possible uses for your business. And this is, I guess, a little bit of this is just springboarding from what I just talked about there. And this first one it's more AI in general, and not just a ChatGPT thing. But is using something to help with your writing. So I use Grammarly, and some people in my company have Grammarly on their computers. So in our industry, and I mean this as nicely as possible, because it even applies to me many times, and I write kind of for a living a little bit, or I create content, I'm prone to wordy sentences or some improper sentence structure or whatever. And some people just, they struggle with writing and don't really catch their sentence fragments or their run-on sentences or missing commas, etc. And so for people at various levels in the organization, having a tool like Grammarly, which is basically using AI to help correct your writing as you write, can be a very helpful tool to give your team, I guess, the tools that they need to sound professional to the people they work with. And what I like about Grammarly is, some of the AI stuff is a bit of a crutch and causes you not to use your brain as much anymore. Grammarly is actually helps me be a better writer because it will make recommendations. And sometimes I'm like, no, I don't want your recommendation. But sometimes I'm like, whoa, you used a lot of irrelevant words that you could cut out, and it makes your sentence more effective and punchy. So I think that's a good one for companies to use. Another one is prospecting. So prospecting, and by this I just mean new sales, it can be a lengthy process, going out and finding, well, let me back up. When I say new sales, I mean going out, prospecting meaning finding companies that you don't do business with that you would like to do business with and getting information about them. And this can be a very time-consuming process. I mean, we build lists for people, and as part of the marketing work we do at Elite, and we have a handful of clients that we do that work for, and it's very time-consuming. And there's a lot of tools that we use to do that well. However, if you're on a budget and you're looking to do something kind of on the cheap and want to start out with a small list, ChatGPT can be helpful. You can start inputting building criteria and things that you're looking for in a specific geography, and it's going to be able to start generating some results for you. It's probably going to struggle with office buildings that are like generic office buildings, but when it comes to medical practices and schools and manufacturing and public venues, I think you can generate a decent list that gets the ball rolling. You're rarely going to be able to find contact names or contact information, but sometimes getting the companies that you want to do business with is a really good first start, and ChatGPT can certainly help with that. So another possible use for your company is just social media posts, like helping in generating social media posts. This all depends on what you're doing. Again, I think social media posts that are just blatantly AI driven, and usually you can tell they got a bunch of like the little emojis built into them, like the little icons, the check boxes and the light bulbs and that sort of thing. Usually that's an AI produced post. But I do think that if you are intentional and you are trying to feature certain things or post certain things about your company and you load in the appropriate information, it can help you build out a schedule, even with some content ideas and maybe even some of your posts that you can then take as a springboard to sort of refine it like you want it to. The last possible use for companies, and I think a lot of people probably already do this, is just document generation for various company needs. So job descriptions or forms or whatever. Again, it's always a good, hey, let me get the ball rolling. And ChatGPT can help get the ball rolling for you. And generating documents is always something that can be a tedious and time-consuming task to start from scratch. But it's always easy when you've got something to work from and then to build upon. Okay, so lastly, I want to move into some what I would just call cautions regarding ChatGPT. and I suppose AI in general here a little bit, is, and some of these are going to be a little bit more moral and ethical and maybe even a bit theological or philosophical. But I think it's helpful to remember ChatGPT is not a person. It never will be a person. Like, in principle, it can't be a person. There are certain features to what it means to be human that, in principle, a computer cannot have. Consciousness, awareness, genuine creativity, understanding, for instance. Like, ChatGPT doesn't understand anything in the way a human would understand something. There's the moral components as well. So ChatGPT is not a moral being. It's not a being in general, but it's certainly not, doesn't have a moral or ethical framework that it's able to reason through. Everything is just inputs and outputs. It's a very complicated version of inputs and outputs and algorithms, etc. But it nonetheless is that. And we just need to be careful in not treating it as such. And it can also become a little bit of an echo chamber. And it's known to do that. Like, it cozies up to you, as it were. And there's been some tragic stories of people using it as a counselor, as for relationships, on and on and on. And it certainly can't bear that sort of weight. And we shouldn't make it try to do that. And it'll be destructive if we do. The second one is trying to remove the human from every aspect of our business. So somebody had posted, I put a quote up on LinkedIn, and somebody commented on it, and was in a sentence that they said that really struck a chord with me, is the companies that will be successful using AI are the ones that use it keeping humans at the center of everything. And I think there's truth to that, and that's my hope as well. I think in our industry in particular, it is a very human-centered business. And as much as we'd love to talk about all the possible changes in robotics and, on and on and on, I think regardless of how that stuff shakes out, whether it's really significant or not as much, I think there's still going to be a significant human component to what we do. And so our job necessarily, just in business, as you think about your purpose as a business owner, is not necessarily to remove humanity from our economic efforts so that we can make a bunch of money, so that we can then, just do what we want to do, travel, indulge ourselves, etc. The very act of working and creating and building and sustaining and employing people, it's its own thing a bit that carries value with it, along with hopefully giving value to others. So I think it's in our best interests, and certainly in the best interests of our team, to not be a slave to efficiency. That efficiency alone as the driver of business, carried to its end, will end up destroying business and the people that are a part of it. And we just need to be cognizant of that. Efficiency is good. We should work towards being efficient as long as it's constrained by other goods. Okay, number 3, and my third concern is, and I'm going to sound like an old curmudgeon here, it is just beware of becoming intellectually and verbally stupid. People would talk about this with calculators, for instance. If you use a calculator, you're not going to know how to do math. Well, you still are taught to learn to do math, but there is a real sense in where if we're not careful, we can drown ourselves in a sea of information and at the same time lose the ability to reason. And that's a very real danger. And I know for me personally, I don't want that to be the case. Information and reasoning are two different things. Reasoning utilizes information, but the more we let somebody feed us information and the less thinking that we do, and we view ChatGPT as almost like this omnipotent or omniscient being that we've created in our own image, we can reduce our own intellectual capabilities and our verbal capabilities as well. And I just think we need to be aware of that and push back against that. And that's true for any technological advance. We want to be careful that it's not reducing or taking away from things that make us uniquely human and add value to our lives and take away or distract us from the ends from which we were created. Okay, number 4 is well, let me do this here. Because I had another point here that I'm just going to add on to that. And I made a note of this. Beware of losing sight of what makes you human and how the information glut of AI tends to make you apathetic to truth, reason, creativity, curiosity, relationships, and much more. So there is a sense in where this idea of AI and ChatGPT, it can, if we're not careful, suppress our desire for other things that are good, like creativity, curiosity, relationships in particular. This is a big one. Fighting and wrestling with the truth. And we just need to, again, be aware of that and push back against that impulse. With every piece of technology or good, let's say. So here's a good one. Alcohol is, I think, in general, maybe this is controversial to some people, is a good that can be for society. But if it's not guarded by virtue, it can ruin society. And it has. Now, the temperance movement of and prohibition to outlaw alcohol doesn't work either. So I'm not suggesting we should outlaw AI. But at the same time, we need to have virtuous guardrails on it that let it be the good that it is without destroying other good things and letting it swallow them up. So I think that is a concern as well. And then lastly, and this one's a little bit more of a big picture, maybe even longer term. And I've seen people write about this. I've seen a Substack on it, talking about AI slop. and so what they mean by that is, over time, as AI continues to generate more and more content, and more of our own content is infused with AI-driven content, the whole thing becomes this vicious cycle of kind of drivel, if you will, where it's recycling and recycling and recycling things that it has produced itself. And including, mind-numbing content that people create in the process and so on and so forth. And the idea is that it just over time, this thing could build into something that the quality of the content will continue to decrease if AI is driving or generating so much of the content. Now, I'm happy if someone wants to push back on this. And if I can find the article, I'll post it in the show notes here that was talking about AI slop. But again, something else to be mindful for, and I think a motive to be creative on your own and write creatively yourself using analogies and things that are personal in a way that are not easily replicable, and it could make your writing or your communication stand out in a world that increasingly will become a bit more mindless or less substantive, I think. More surfacey. So anyway, I hope I'm not trying to be Chicken Little on any of these, but I think they're real concerns to think about and navigate through so that we do a good job utilizing the tool that we have and let it be a blessing and not a curse in our lives. So I hope this is helpful. I'd love to hear your feedback, pushback, whatever it is, and or anything else you want me to chat about or go into depth about one of these things more in another episode. Just let me know. I hope it's helpful, and we'll see you in the next episode. If you found the information in this podcast helpful, please like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform that you're using. If you would like more resources or help to grow your cleaning company, head over to EliteBSC.com. We have loads of articles, videos, free tools, coaching options, and a lot more. If your company is greater than $500K in revenue and you want to take your learning experience to the next level, check out our mastermind group. You can learn more about that at EliteBSC.com/mastermind.